What the heck is going on in the crypto market? On January 10th, the SEC announced approval of spot Bitcoin ETFs, and that resulted in, well, Bitcoin falling 10% and plunging below key support of its 50-day moving average. But don't be so quick to dismiss the market, because those funds did not leave the crypto market. Rather, they rotated into Ethereum. And so we've got Ethereum breaking out to a new 52-week high as Bitcoin is breaking down. So did you catch that major shift in the market? Be sure to tune into this video, because we are going to walk through with you the top altcoins that are setting up for potential buy entry in the coming days to capitalize on this market shift and strength that's coming in Ethereum. And we're also looking at a potential buy entry in Ethereum on the pullback. So let's go ahead and dive in and discuss how this shift can impact your profitability in your trading strategy. But before we do, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe and ring that notification bell to ensure you receive more great content like this. After the SEC announced approval of spot Bitcoin ETFs on January 10th, Bitcoin initially had a positive knee-jerk reaction higher, but 2 days later sold off sharply, plunging 10%, falling below the breakout level and also its 50-day moving average. And after a brief dip below the 50-day moving average, settled below it, and now for the past several days, Bitcoin has been below its 50-day moving average as well as its 8 and 20-day moving averages. So Bitcoin is breaking down on that news. And if you followed our last video, this sell-off should not have been a surprise to you, because we mentioned in our video the old Wall Street adage of buy the rumor, sell the news, which means that typically when there's big news that's expected on something, the price is already baked in to the expectation of that news. So what happens is when the news is released, rather than seeing a positive price reaction, we see a negative reaction. And that's one of the reasons why at MTG, we don't trade the news, we don't trade rumors. We simply trade what we see, not what we think. And by trading what we see and not what we think, that keeps us out of trouble, because we can see that regardless of whether we think that Bitcoin should be going higher because of the Bitcoin ETF news, it doesn't matter. What we see is the price is moving lower. Now, that being the case, I wanted to point out here that although Bitcoin sold off sharply, you would definitely be mistaken to say that the money moved out of the crypto market. In fact, all that happened was we saw some significant rotation out of Bitcoin and into Ethereum. Now, we follow the price of Ethereum because Ethereum, as the second largest crypto, is a great barometer for the overall health of the altcoin market. So when we see strength in Ethereum, typically that's a sign that we're going to be seeing strength in altcoins as well. And take a look at this major divergence. Check this out. We had Bitcoin breaking down below its 8, 20, and 50-day moving averages. At the same time, when Bitcoin broke down, Ethereum rallied and broke out above a base of consolidation that had been in place for more than a month. So we broke out above a month-long consolidation. So there you go. As that money was rotating out of Bitcoin, the money was rotating into Ethereum. Now, when Bitcoin pulled back, we did get a pullback in Ethereum as well. But I wanted to show you this key point here. Notice how Ethereum held the breakout level. This horizontal yellow line marks the high of the month-long consolidation. And remember that in technical analysis, a prior level of resistance becomes a new level of support after the resistance is broken. So we would not have wanted to see the price come back below this breakout level. That'd be a negative sign, but it didn't. In fact, even on that big sell-off day, we held above the breakout level. And also, notably, check out this. The price is holding above the 8-day EMA. That's this green line, the 8-day exponential moving average. And that's a great indicator of short-term trends. So very bullish price action in Ethereum here over the past couple of days since that news was released, because we've got a pullback that holds the breakout level and also held the 8-day EMA. And at the same time, Bitcoin has broken down. So we see major divergence here between the markets, between Bitcoin and Ethereum. And prior to this SEC news, I would say that the focus was on Bitcoin, but now that focus has definitely shifted to Ethereum, with the market showing very positive sentiment towards Ethereum and potentially the altcoin market as well. With such relative strength in Ethereum, we are now looking for a potential buy entry on this pullback, and that'll give us a potentially lower risk entry point with a high risk reward, because we can set our stop relatively tight below the breakout level if this breakout fails to hold. So if you're a member of MTG Crypto, keep an eye out for a trade alert for a potential buy entry into ETH on this pullback. And we're going to dive in and show you the top altcoins on our radar here. But before we do, let's just take a quick look at the weekly chart of Ethereum. We want to zoom out and see a little bit more of the longer term trend, because on the daily chart, we see the breakout, but it's also good to keep an eye on the weekly chart so that you can see where potentially we may find next resistance levels at. So zooming out to the weekly chart, we can see here this base that we broke out of, first of all. Notice this 5-week basic consolidation here. That's what we just broke out above, and we pulled back in, but we're still above the high as we saw on the daily chart. Notice how the price action is also held above the 8-week moving average, other than some intra-week undercuts. Furthermore, we wanted to also show you that there's major support at the low of that base that we broke out of from the highs of April 2023, formed support of the lows of that 5-week basic consolidation. And you may recall, if you've been following our videos for a while, we actually showed you how that key support level was developing and forming a base. So it's a nice valid base of support that we've broken out from. The best bases of support are typically 2 to 5 weeks long. And so that gives us better odds that the breakout's going to hold. And we can see here also that the breakout occurred on higher than average weekly volume. In fact, that was the highest volume we'd had almost since March of this past year. So that's a key point too. So because Ethereum is at a new 52-week high, there's minimal overhead supply. But in a case like this, we want to use Fibonacci indicator to determine where we may find support or resistance levels at. And if you're new to Fibonacci, I'm going to go ahead and leave a link in the comments where you can learn about it. It's an indicator that can be very reliable for predicting support and resistance levels, especially on longer term charts like this. And we can see here basically 3 lines. We have a 38%, 38.2% retracement level, 50%, and 61.8%. Notice how the 38.2% retracement level perfectly aligned with the highs of the base that formed over the past 5 weeks. So that actually acted perfectly as resistance, like Fibonacci would predict. And after 5 weeks of consolidation at that resistance level, we broke out above it. So the next significant resistance level in terms of Fibonacci is over 2,800, right around 2,840. So we've got some significant leeway here for a potential rally and another leg higher in ETH. So let's go ahead now and take a look at leading altcoins that are on our radar, and we'll see what's setting up for potential buy entry in the coming days. What we're going to show you here is our top relative strength altcoins on our radar screen. And we find this list by basically monitoring our high relative strength watch list. This is a watch list where we narrow down, we filter from, over 10,000 altcoins down to those that have the top relative strength based upon filters. That gets us down to a list of about 80 cryptos, and we regularly update this list. We update it once or twice a week, and we share this with members of MTG Crypto, the high relative strength watch list. But from this high relative strength watch list, we then scan every day to look for potential trade setups, because we're not simply buying anything just because it has high relative strength. We have to look for a valid trade setup, which means a relatively low risk entry point and a clearly defined stop point. So out of all these cryptos on our high relative strength watch list, here are the top ones on our radar for potential buy entry in the coming days. First of all, we have SUI, and take a look at this incredible relative strength. As Ethereum is on a pullback, SUI has just been breaking out to new swing highs. In fact, out of the past 4 days, it's set new swing highs out of 3 out of the past 4 days. What we also like about SUI is that it's a relatively new crypto. In fact, it was an ICO only earlier this year, in May of this year. So there's not a lot of overhead supply from people being trapped at higher price levels, and we're just about to break out above all of that resistance. So looking great here. Again, we've got high volume, volume confirming the breakout. Volume spiked to more than double its average daily volume for 3 days in a row. All of the moving averages are trending higher. So SUI is one of the top setups on our pullback radar for potential buy entry. Generally, we're going to be looking for a pullback either to the 8-day EMA or some type of sideways consolidation for several weeks to allow the moving averages to catch up. So SUI is first on the radar. Next up, we've got SEI. We love the relative strength of this setup. Notice how it's forming an actual bull pennant pattern. And I'll go ahead and draw that so you can see it here if you're new to charting. This is a pennant pattern where we've got basically a channel on the up, trending down, and then we've got a lower channel trending higher like this. That's called a pennant. So a pennant is not necessarily a bullish or a bearish pattern. It's a continuation pattern, which means that typically when a pennant forms, when the price breaks out of the pattern, it'll continue in the direction of the pennant. And we're calling it a bull pennant because the price direction prior to forming this pattern is up. So most likely, what we may see here is a potential breakout from this pennant pattern and a resumption of upward prices. So what we're looking for here specifically is a breakout above the upper channel of this downtrending line, which would currently be above a 2-day high, above the 70.76 level. And again, we've got the rising 20-day EMA acting as support and actually showing confluence with the lower channel of this pennant pattern. So we've also got lower volume during a consolidation. That's what we want to see. Okay, that's bullish. We want to see high volume when the prices are moving higher, but during the consolidation, we want to see declining volume because that means the sellers are not stepping in as soon as the bulls take a rest. So what we should see, though, is if the price breaks out above the upper channel of this pattern, we want to see the volume confirm by spiking higher as well. So second on our list is SEI. Next on our list is TIA. TIA is another top relative strength crypto. Notice how it's breaking out, setting new swing highs even with Ethereum on a pullback. However, TIA has been a bit choppier. We had some pretty nasty undercut action here several times over the past several weeks, but definitely a top relative strength mover. In fact, this is a play that we were in just last week, but unfortunately we stopped out with all the volatility of Bitcoin. But no problem. We continue to look for a potential re-entry point on a pullback to the 8-day EMA or after a bit of consolidation. So that's TIA. Next up, we've got MINA, M-I-N-A. Now, MINA is not quite as nice of a pattern as the first three, but it is holding firmly above its 50-day moving average. Notice the clear test of the 50, and it's toying with trying to get back above its 8 and 20-day EMA, but the moving averages are still trending the right direction, and we've got some volatility contraction, and that's good. What you want to see is a price action tighten up before a potential breakout. So with MINA, what we're keeping an eye on here is this sharp angled downtrend line that we've got developing here, which would basically be a move above the high of the past 3 days would be a breakout above that line. But again, we want to look for the confirmation of volume. Next on our list is ORDI. ORDI has also been showing top relative strength. It's consolidating above its 20-day EMA after several days of undercuts. It's also trying to hold above its 8-day EMA. And like MINA, we could actually draw a trend line from the highs, although we don't have a valid trend line because it's only one touch of an anchor point. For a trend line to be valid, you want to have at least 3 touches. So we don't really have a valid downtrend line there established yet. So in this case, what we're going to look for is more of a breakout above horizontal price resistance, which we can see here. We could look at getting potentially a partial position on a move above the $80 level and potentially adding to the position on a breakout above the actual high. Now, ORDI is a higher risk play. It's quite volatile and it's a fast mover. So we do recommend keeping small position size if you enter ORDI as well. PENDLE is another top relative strength crypto. It's on a pullback right now, pulling back to its 8-day EMA after a massive breakout on January 10th. Now, we actually made a profitable trade on this in the MTG tribe. We listed this as a potential buy entry before the SEC news came out, and we did exit our positions ahead of the SEC news, but we made a nice profit on this trade because of its relative strength. This was already on our radar. So we're looking at a potential re-entry into PENDLE on this pullback. We like this pullback to the 8-day EMA. And this goes to show you a great example of why we don't chase prices. It can be really tempting to chase when you see the price going up and up and up. But prices typically are going to pull back, and you don't want to be the guy buying up here because you were impatient and couldn't wait. So always wait for those pullbacks if you miss the breakout. If you buy the breakout, that's great. But if you miss the breakout, don't chase. Wait for the first pullback to near the breakout level, which is going to typically give you a much lower risk entry point. Again, volume confirming here, so PENDLE looks solid. Next up is ICP. ICP is also forming, not exactly a perfect pennant pattern, but a pennant type pattern, which you can see here. And just like with the other pennant we showed you with SEI, the potential buy entry would be a rally above the high of this upper channel, or a move above yesterday's high above the $14 level would be confirmation. Again, price action holding above the 20-day EMA and holding above the 8. Got lower volume during the consolidation, so it's looking solid, ICP. And finally, LDO. LDO is actually a DAO that has a high correlation to the price of Ethereum because it's used as a staking mechanism. So LDO is kind of a play that capitalizes on Ethereum's breakout. And LDO actually just recently broke out to a new 52-week high. You can see the breakout level there. And we actually scored a nice gain on this in the MTG crypto service, just like PENDLE. LDO was the other position we were in, which made a nice move on that ETF rally. So we actually sold LDO, locked in gains, and then we bought back in on the pullback to the 8-day EMA. So the trade's slightly against us now, but still in a solid uptrend. And if you haven't gotten LDO, it does present a potentially low risk entry point here on this undercut of the 8-day EMA with a stop below the 20-day EMA. So there you have it. That's 8 altcoins that are on our radar right now for potential buy entry in the coming days. Remember, wait for the price action to come to you. Don't chase. If you don't get a valid buy point, either a breakout or a pullback to support level, then pass it by and look for the next trade setup. That's the key to long-term success as a trader. As always, if you're a member of the MTG crypto tribe, we'll send a trade alert to you if we spot valid entry points in any of these trade setups. We'll also let you know what our stop price is. If you're not yet a member of MTG Crypto, first of all, hit that like button and subscribe to make sure you get more content like this. And then head on over to morpheustrading.com and click on Crypto Picks to find all about our crypto swing trading services and how we can help you step up your game and learn to trade with confidence. Remember to trade what you see, not what you think. See you back here in the next video.